The Field of 68 Media Network presents Red is the New Orange, a Syracuse basketball podcast.
Vince intercepts a pass, breakaway for the freshman guard, he flies and slams! Aerial assault from Judah Mintz. Looking to go back door to Bell, they get it to him near corner three, knocks it down! Chris Bell, the sharpshooter.
Bringing you everything you need to know out of the 315.
Up top, Williams surges ahead, up with the right hand and in. A pretty up and under move from Benny Williams to beat his man. Over to Taylor. He skips into the lane, puts up a floater, and drops in.
Let's get it started with your hosts, Ian Unsworth and Johnny Gadamowitz.
Well, no Syracuse basketball over the weekend, but no shortage of action across the ACC. We don't have a March Madness bracket yet, but we do have an ACC Tournament bracket. And with that, we say hello alongside Ian Unsworth, Johnny Gadamowitz with you. It's Red is the New Orange, as always, a part of the Field of 68 podcast network. Busy time of year, goes without saying, and we appreciate you for sticking with us all season long as things come towards an exciting ACC tournament looming large coming up end of this week. As we look across the scores over the weekend, couple of exciting games, couple of teams flip-flopping spots in the standings, and all told, Ian, Syracuse ends up in the 7 seed. Not the spot I thought would be most ideal. I don't think you either, but that is where the Orange find themselves as they gear up for some ACC tournament action coming up later this week.
I don't think either of us thought Wake Forest really stood much of a chance against Clemson because the Tigers looked so in sync against Syracuse earlier last week. And then Clemson scores 28 points in the first half, and things get a little sticky. Hunter Salas has a fantastic game, 22 and 7 boards. Wake shoots over 60% from the field in the second half and win at home. And then, of course, North Carolina State, that well-coached team that they are, comes out and throws up a dud against Pitt. DJ Horn, who somehow miraculously puts up 30 every single time he sees an orange jersey in front of him, has 3 points. 3, not even 6, 3 points.
Yeah, just one hand, not 2.
So, I mean, you needed one of those games to go your way if you're a Syracuse fan. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles, because look back earlier in this season, the games that they probably could have won. Georgia Tech is the one that sticks out in my mind.
Totally.
You need that game, especially on the road. That win gives you the 5 seed. And instead you're stuck here looking at, again, North Carolina State, who could potentially score a bajillion on you. And then you got Duke waiting in the wings. So won't be easy.
Yeah, I think you can even point to the Boston College loss on the road. You can look at the Florida State game at home, all what-ifs that we will never know the answer to. But we'll give you a quick rundown from the around the conference scores from the weekend. As you mentioned, Ian, those games that really matter. Wake takes down Clemson, Pitt takes down NC State. But outside of that, you had Virginia beat Georgia Tech, BC and Louisville in a bottom conference cellar dweller battle. BC squeaks that one out. Florida State beats Miami in a battle with the Sunshine State. Hokies over the Irish. And of course, the game of the weekend, Carolina. I believe they led wire to wire in that game, defeating Duke in the Tobacco Road showdown. So all told, we do have this bracket that we're staring at now right in front of us. And from a Syracuse standpoint, Ian, you get the winner of NC State and Louisville. For me, the reason the 7 seeds think so much, and I think a lot of people would be on the same page here, is not necessarily because you get the winner of NC State Louisville, but now, assuming you win that game, whoever it is, you don't get a seemingly beatable Virginia squad that's inept on offense in round 2. Instead, you get the mighty Duke Blue Devils. So if that marquee win that Syracuse so desperately needs is going to come, it's going to have to come earlier on in this bracket than I think anybody would have wanted it to based on the matchup that the Orange have drawn.
And I think that Virginia game would have been great. Cuse has figured it out offensively. The ball moves really well. That's what you have to do against the pack line defense, as well as making a couple threes and beating them down the floor. Virginia's been pretty inept, not only offensively, but also away from Charlottesville. Like, this team really struggles on the road out of John Paul Jones Arena. And you get them at a neutral site. As we talked about last Friday, the crowd environment at this ACC tournament is going to be completely different. Are there going to be Virginia fans there at 9:30 p.m. on a Thursday? Who knows? Probably not. But Duke's probably going to travel everywhere because there are Duke fans up and down the East Coast and all around the country, even though half of them didn't go to Duke. It's a mystery, but they just happen to be around.
The students aren't doing spring break in Mexico or the Bahamas. The students will probably do spring break in the nation's capital.
They're probably interning or something. But yeah. I mean, credit to the Cameron Crazies. They were out in full force, even though it was their spring break this past weekend. I mean, that it's only 5,000 in there, but it looked pretty nuts. But back to the Syracuse perspective.
Yeah.
The Duke game did not seem like it was close at all, at least in the second half. And Duke has only gotten better from there. That's the thing. The Virginia game might not have been close, but Virginia has clearly regressed, and Syracuse has clearly taken steps forward.
Yeah, it feels like at this time of year, you want to get the squad that's down, right? You want to get the team that has the pressure on them. And it feels like right now, from a UVA standpoint, there's a ton of pressure on them to rack up some big wins and try to make their case for an NCAA tournament bid. But it won't be Virginia. It will be Duke that the Orange get in round 2, assuming they win round 1, and then you want to get real crazy and maybe they make something happen against Duke. Then potentially they'll get the Cavaliers in the semis. But that's getting ahead of ourselves, Ian. And as far as Syracuse's first game in this tournament, it's going to come on Wednesday night, 7 o'clock on ESPN2, for those of you wondering what channel to flip to come Wednesday night, against the winner of NC State and Louisville. Now, I will say, and I said this on our last episode too, I would have much rathered Boston College or Miami as opposed to NC State. I think that 10-seeded Wolfpack squad is a little sneaky with where they're at when you consider the seeding. I know Syracuse beat them twice. I know the Orange have already had their way with them this season, once on the road and once at home. One of them was a lot closer than the other. The January matchup was a double-figure game. The February one, a little bit tighter. I don't know. Maybe it's me just being a little nervous that beating a team 3 times in 1 year is a really tough thing to do.
Yeah.
And I know we've certainly got after NC State for their struggles and their shortcomings this season. But I don't think you'd say I'm wrong in saying it's a team that has some talent, and if you don't show up, can maybe surprise you.
You could say the same about Miami, too. Miami's been so inconsistent with the injuries, but those dudes can score, and they almost won in the Dome. So I don't think either slot, first-round matchup-wise, unless you got BC, who is almost guaranteed to give you the ball 16, 17 times a game, or somehow, some way you get Louisville. I mean, again, the Louisville games have been rather close for no reason. So I don't feel objectively secure in any sense if I'm Syracuse, because there are a lot of things that at this point in the year you can point to say, I'm not so sure. Whether it's having one center who has to play 40 minutes, or every once in a while you get a guard that goes off on an opposing team and it seems like Syracuse can't stop them. Well, BC and Louisville give you big problems. I mean, Huntley Hatfield's been pretty good, and Quentin Post is Quentin Post. And then NC State and Miami give you guard problems. Miami can score with the best of them. They'd love to play every single game in the 80s in this tournament and run you up and down the floor. And DJ Horn just has a knack for not missing against Syracuse. So, I mean, if it all comes down to it, sure, give me Louisville. I'll be happy as a clam. But I don't feel great necessarily about seeing any 4 of those teams.
Yeah, it's pick your poison. We knew it was going to be that way all along, but this obviously is not the most ideal path the Orange could have created for themselves. Talking about those Louisville games, both of them were single-digit games. And if you reflect back to the one in Syracuse, let's not forget, the Cardinals put up 92
and had a chance to win it.
They did. 94-92 was the final in that one.
Yeah, Sky
So
Clark
even
airballed
though,
a three to
right.
0.3 seconds left.
Yeah. That was a deep exhale after that one. But even for a team that has only won, again, 3 conference games all year, Louisville's ACC record, 3-17. Like, we should not be in a position here where we're talking about, hey, even Louisville could present a little bit of a scary issue matchup-wise. Like, that should not be the case. This team won 3 conference games all season, yet here we are saying, Louisville, NC State, not quite a toss-up. Obviously, you'd prefer the Cardinals. But still, there were things about both outcomes that from an Orange fan might make you feel a little queasy before Wednesday's game gets underway.
And it all comes back to when you have those games that you should be winning in the regular season, when things get out of hand. But this is the end result. It could have been the 5 seed and had Notre Dame or Georgia Tech. And even though Syracuse lost to Georgia Tech, I feel very comfortable with getting either of those teams as compared to a North Carolina State or a Miami. So a game goes here, a game goes there, and Syracuse is in a much better spot. So at this point, what can you do? You just have to grit your teeth and go for it.
Well, Orange fans have been on the edge of their seats all season long. They've had to wait. It's been a long week. No game this weekend. Felt weird.
It felt
like everybody and their mother was playing in a big game this weekend except for Syracuse. But that's how the schedule played out this season, and now all eyes turn towards Wednesday's matchup. We mentioned off the jump of the show, we do have a full bracket, so after this quick break, me and Ian will break down that bracket, give you some picks, and tell you who we like to be the champs of the ACC. That's coming up in a moment. Don't go anywhere.
As you guys know by now, we've partnered with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers of the Field of 68 as we all get ready for the best month of the year, March Madness. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can use the bonus code FIELD150 and you will get $150 in free bets on your first wager with BetMGM, regardless of whether or not you win that first bet. Here's the best part. All you need to do is deposit and bet $5 of your hard-earned money. This is how you make it work. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using the bonus code FIELD150. That's FIELD150. Deposit at least $5 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $150 in bonus bets regardless of the outcome of your bet. Just make sure you use that bonus code FIELD150 when you sign up. And remember, BetMGM is now available in one wallet in select states. As a New Jersey resident, this is super convenient when I have to go cover games in Philly or New York, which happens quite a bit. When you cross state borders, you just log into your existing account and fire away. You don't have to create a new account in each state. It's easy, it's simple, and it's clean. And most importantly, we have some fun stuff coming up for the conference tournaments and for the NCAA tournament. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odds boost, and my personal favorite, a nice little parlay boost here and there. So download the BetMGM app and sign up today. Big news, guys. I am thrilled to announce that we have partnered with Autograph, a company founded by the GOAT himself, Tom Brady. The Autograph fandom app gives you access to the best college hoops content, fan contests, and exclusive rewards like discounted tickets, all for doing the things that diehard fans like you already do, following your favorite team in the news and listening to podcasts just like this one. When Tom, and yes, I am calling him Tom, we're on a first name basis these days, co-founded Autograph, he had one mission in mind: change the fan experience for the better. It works like this. You get all of your college hoops content you want in one place. You get articles from your favorite writers, pods from your favorite hosts, contests from your favorite creators, all on the feeds and the sites that you already enjoy. But instead of having to go to all these different places, it all comes to you in one spot, the Autograph fandom app. But here's the best part. The more content that you consume, the higher you rank in the app. As you consider the level up in status on the app, you can unlock unique rewards curated exclusively for you. So download the free Autograph app in the App Store and use the referral code F68, that's F68, or tap in at the link in the description below or in the podcast app of your choosing to start earning points for doing something as normal as listening to this very podcast.
Thanks so much to Rob for that. Games get underway on Tuesday in the ACC tournament with the lower seeds doing battle for a chance to go on to the second round. And now we have hit the portion of the program where Ian and myself are going to run down how we think these games shake out. We'll go round by round and give our alternating picks. This way we keep you on your toes rather than dumping it on you all at once.
And we have put pen to paper on these, by the way. There's no
we
waffling.
Have, yes.
All right, there's no waffling.
Handwritten. I won't flip it so everyone can see who I have. But the suspense has been building all weekend long. We've had a couple of days now to sort of let these matchups marinate and think about how things are going to play out. So without further ado, let's get to it. We start with Tuesday's slate. Tuesday,
I feel like we need music under this, Johnny. I'm sorry,
I know,
but
I know,
feel like
really.
we need like the Chris Berman, Monday Night Football whip around music going.
Yep. We'll start with Tuesday. As I mentioned, 3 games, 2 o'clock, 4:30, 7. Nice triple header for you. You can watch them all on the ACC network. The first is the 12-seeded Notre Dame Fighting Irish going up against the 13-seeded Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. And I don't know, maybe this is just me mostly paying attention to Georgia Tech during the Syracuse game where the Yellow Jackets beat them, but I've got the Jackets taking down the Irish. It's been a little bit of a long year for Notre Dame. I know they've got the kid who could win ACC Freshman of the Year. Marcus Burton, yeah, but outside of that, not a ton going for them in South Bend this season. I'll go Georgia Tech. NC State Louisville, I don't see a way where the Cardinals win this game as much as I love it. I think NC State just has a little too much juice on both ends. I'm not sure Kenny Payne's crew is going to be able to keep pace with what the Wolfpack bring to the table. And by far the best game of the day, in my opinion, is Boston College and Miami.
Yeah.
I know it's a different Miami squad, but you don't go to the Final Four one year only to be bounced in the first round of the ACC tournament the next. So give me the Hurricanes finding a way to win.
All right, Johnny, we're 3 for 3 here. I've also got Georgia Tech. I think that Nathan George, Yellow Jackets freshman point guard, is definitely good enough to put a little clamp on Marcus Burton. And the Yellow Jackets just have more scoring. Like Miles Kelly, we don't talk about him a lot, but he's one of those dudes that could give you 25, 30 and take over a game like this. So going with Georgia Tech in the first game of the day. Also have NC State. I think that the way Louisville plays is really helpful for North Carolina State because it's mostly just one-on-one ball. And if you get Huntley Hatfield into foul trouble, I think DJ Burns is probably going to have himself a nice little 20-piece, as he probably often does at various establishments along the fast food chains. But little 20-piece McNugget with a biscuit on the side. Late game tonight, BC and Miami. I think Norchad Omier probably deals with Quentin Post because Norchad Omier just has a way of dealing with these guys. And Miami has so many people that can score. Keyshawn George. You've got Wooga Poplar. Pack. The problem with Miami has been that Nigel Pack has had some really bad games over the stretch of the season, and that's why they've lost some really ugly ones. But I think he gets it going, and I think Miami wins. So right now, Johnny, you and I are even.
All right, so we're identical through one. How do we want to do this now? Do we want to snake it where you go first for round 2, or should I just take it?
Let's snake it. Okay. All right, Wednesday at noon, Virginia Tech and Florida State. 2:30 Wake, and then the winner of our 13-12 matchup, which we both have as Georgia Tech, 7 Syracuse and NC State, and 9:30 Clemson and Miami. Of course, those last 3 games, you get the winner of the first game, but seeing as we all have the same picks, we're just going to keep it that way. All right, so at noon, I think Florida State gets the better of Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, to me, is not very impressive offensively because as we talked about after the Syracuse game, they don't have guys that can drive the ball, only shooters. And that doesn't necessarily work all that well when, first of all, you're playing a noon game, so you don't have a lot of time to warm up and get comfortable. You're waking up and it's go, go, go. Secondly, you're in a different gym. That plays into it too. You're not in Castle Coliseum where everything's small and the crowd's right behind the rims. This is an NBA arena. And it's probably going to feel half empty. And I think Florida State, the way they play with the extra bench bodies, the physicality, they can shut Virginia Tech's smaller shooting guards down. So I've got Florida State. At 2:30, got Wake over Georgia Tech. Don't think this one will be that close, honestly, because Wake's guards have been so good. I might have picked an upset if Wake didn't beat Clemson. But I think that's enough juice for Steve Forbes to turn it around and get his team on a positive track. I've got Syracuse beating NC State. It's just NC State is too easy of a team to shut down. As long as they contain Horn, I don't care if Syracuse double teams them for all I care. Contain Horn, stop Burns inside. And you've seen how Syracuse can out trash talk and get in North Carolina State's head. I think that happens again on Wednesday. And finally, Clemson, Miami. This is probably a really good game, but instead of just one big as BC has, Clemson's got 2 or 3 guys that'll give not PJ Hall, nor Chad O'Meara trouble. So, in the 4 games, FSU, Wake, Cuse, Clemson. Those are my Wednesday picks.
All right, I agree with you on 3 of those 4, Ian. The one where I disagree is the very first one. You mentioned that Florida State, they've got the depth, a little more bully ball, whereas Virginia Tech, the shooter, is going to be more reliant on the Padulas and the Coutures of the world. But I think those 2 guys get hot. I think they've got the experience. They've been there for a while. They know what it takes to win big games. Florida State, nothing about them knocks my socks off. I know that they're defensively oriented and, they can pose some matchup problems and they're going to impose their will on the interior. And maybe that's an area where the Hokies fall short. But I see them struggling to keep up with the pace that Virginia Tech is going to try to play with. And they split the 2 games in the head-to-head department this season. So it's a toss-up. It can go either way. I just think Mike Young has a good thing going in Blacksburg. And people have kind of been sleeping on the Hokies all year. I don't see them going on any sort of serious run, a little more on that later, but I do think they take down the Seminoles in the second round. And then everything else, we're on the same page. Wake's got their back against the wall. They need to stack wins. They've got momentum on their side. While I like Miles Kelly and the rest of this Georgia Tech squad, again, not enough firepower. Hunter Salas is just playing on a different planet right now.
Yeah, he
and
might
I
be a
think that
first round
carries
pick.
over.
He has played well enough where he could be a first round pick.
Oh, yeah. Totally. It's a Syracuse podcast, so what are we doing here if we're not picking Syracuse?
If we picked NC State, I think we'd be kicked
But
off.
in all seriousness, I do believe the Orange will win that game.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then there are major problems. More on that tomorrow. We'll have a little bit of a shorter episode where we take a little bit of a deeper dive into the Orange and the Wolfpack. So stay tuned to the pod on Twitter, YouTube, what have you, for that coming out later this week. Miami and Clemson, again, I'm right there with you, and I think that could be a really, really intriguing matchup. I think Miami, not to say that they had much magic going in the first place, but I think their win over BC, I think it fizzles out going up against the Tigers again. With Clemson, you combine the interior presence with the shooters and the guard play and the experience. I think Clemson is a lot better than people are giving them credit for, and I think they take down the Hurricanes to set up a showdown with Virginia in the 3rd round.
Miami's going to have to make a ton of threes if they want to keep that thing close.
Yeah.
Because Clemson, like we saw what Clemson did to Syracuse on the glass, and Miami is even smaller. Like Clemson will out-rebound Miami by 20, and it will be casual.
So here we go. Now it is round 3, getting down to the nitty-gritty of things. So these games are the quarterfinals. It will be on Thursday, March 14th. Game number 1, and this is again according to my bracket, you'll have North Carolina playing their first game at noon against Virginia Tech. Game 2, Pitt will be playing their first game against Wake Forest. That's at 2:30. Game 3, Syracuse and Duke, and then Game 4, Virginia making their tournament debut against Clemson. Game 1, got to go with the Tar Heels. They've got the Conference Player of the Year in R.J. Davis. They have a point guard who is as selfless as it gets in Elliot Cadeau. They have Armando Bacot, who's been there forever and is just a mean man down low.
And is collecting
I think Carolina's a Final Four caliber team, and I think they have their way with Virginia Tech in the ACC quarterfinals. Wake and Pitt, another intriguing one. I don't know. I go back to the fact that, like I said in my breakdown of last round, the Demon Deacons are right there. They're right on the cusp. Like, they've got a lot to play for. And not to say that Pitt doesn't, but I think this is a Wake squad that at times this year has shown you they don't mess around. And I really like what Steve Forbes has done when you think about the past couple of years of this Wake program, whether it's in the portal, bringing in, the Alondes Williams of the world and obviously some nice homegrown talent as well. I think the Demon Deacons get it done. I think they do. I think they take down Pitt and end Jeff Capel's squad's tournament hopes rather early, at least in this ACC tournament. So give me the Demon Deacons there in the corners. Syracuse and Duke, I like Duke. Again, you tip your cap to Red Autry, but at some point when you're going up against a roster full of 4 and 5 stars, you can only do so much. Give me the Blue Devils there as Syracuse's probably March Madness hopes come crashing down with that loss. And then Clemson and UVA, I'm just not a believer in this UVA squad. I know they're defensively sound. I know that they give teams fits on one end of the floor, but there's just not enough firepower on offense. Like, I'm sorry, I like Reese Beekman. I think he's one of the better two-way guards in the conference, if not the country, but I don't know. I don't see them keeping pace. I think Clemson, again, is sneaky good, and I think that's a game that the Tigers pull out. So that sets up my semis then of what would be UNC Wake and Duke Clemson.
Getting there in a bit different ways, but we are identical here when it comes to the Friday result. I think UNC and FSU is probably a slobber knocker. If we get there, probably a slow first half, if I had to guess. It might be 30-24 because FSU will probably slow it down a little bit, seeing as UNC can get out in transition and hit threes so effectively, especially if Cormac Ryan stays hot after putting 31 on Duke. But I think UNC takes it. They'll pull away in the second half because they have too many options. Pitt and Wake is probably the most intriguing game of the tournament, if I had to guess, just because the guards will be playing at an extremely high level. So the question is, does Bub Carrington outperform Hunter Salas? Or as Christian O. Jackson kind of filled us in on when he came on to talk about Wake, I think it's even more Carrington and Boopy Miller, because Miller is the head of that offense. He initiates everything. And so whichever team turns it over less probably wins. But the difference for me is that Wake is a more efficient three-point shooting team. We've seen Blake Hinson shoot Pitt out of games. And I think that could happen where he's the senior. He wants to put the team on his back. I totally understand. But he can get trigger happy and win you a game, but also lose you a game. Only thing I could see for Pitt on the other end is with their three bigs, the Diaz Grahams and Federico Squared, they could get Efton Reed in a little bit of foul trouble and start winning on the glass. But as we saw with Syracuse, Pitt's not physical enough to where it really makes a difference. So give me Wake. I think Salas will be the best player on the floor again. Got Duke over Syracuse. Unfortunate, but, it's just not meant to be. It's not meant to be. Filipowski's going to have himself another game. I would not be surprised. And if Brown gets in foul trouble, like John Shire's a smart coach, man. He's going to go right at Malik Brown, and he's going to do it for 40 minutes. And UVA and Clemson, I'm with you, Johnny. Who on Virginia is going to shoot with Joe Girard? It's one thing when it's the Syracuse offense, but the Clemson offense is so multidimensional. If they go on a 12-0 run, this game might be over in the first 10 minutes. So after all that, UNC Wake, Duke and Clemson Friday. UNC Wake would be the first game. Duke and Clemson the second. 7 and 9:30.
For what it's worth, two outstanding semifinal.
Oh yeah. It'll be good. And so if I remember correctly, Wake has beaten both UNC and Duke this year. So I'm picking North Carolina. It's not even a contest, I think. Wake has been too inconsistent, and there will be a game where they just fall on their face. That's kind of how it's gone this year. Big wins, great performances, and then splat, trip over the curb, and face plant. And if anyone is going to get Efton Reed in foul trouble, get him out of the game, and start attacking the paint, it's going to be Baycott, because that dude will push you around, seal you down, and he had an explosive second half. Duke started coming back, and it was Baycott who kind of woke up there in the final 10 minutes against Duke, and I think that'll happen against Wake Forest. Reed might have a solid start, but at some point, Hubert Davis is going to get in Baycott's face and say, hey, you're a seventh-year senior, whatever, you've got 4 degrees, you better act like it, and get him woken up, and he'll take over the game for a little bit. Duke and Clemson, man. Whoa. I got the Tigers. Might be bold, but I think that Clemson just has that it factor, man. They're old, they guard, and every once in a while, Duke gets discombobulated. Filipowski goes out of the game. Their bench pieces, while they're good, aren't anything amazing. And I think Clemson's just got the layers of depth to make a difference. The guy to keep an eye on in that game will be Ian Shefflin. How productive can he be against Mark Mitchell? Because both those guys get their points on the margins. Offensive rebounds, a 3 here and there, free throws. So if Shefflin has a great game, I think Clemson wins. And I think the final is UNC and Clemson.
All right, my turn. We'll start with UNC Wake. I like the Tar Heels in this game. I do. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, Ian, where it feels like Wake has been very Jekyll and Hyde all year. And I could see this being a game where they're just in over their heads a little too much. You figure if you're Wake, you win that game, you're in the tournament. At that point, sure. It would have been 3 ACC tournament wins, including one over the mighty Tar Heels. I just don't see it happening. I really love what Hubert Davis has done as a coach during his time in Carolina. I think this is a Carolina team that is playing with some energy, is playing with the chip on their shoulder, wants to, I don't know if prove some people wrong is the right way to phrase it, because after all, they are North Carolina, for crying out loud. But I think, that there's a sense of unfinished business with this roster, with Davis and Baycott and these guys, and wanting to get to the top of the mountain like they have done before. And I think that they have their way with Wake. And then the second semi, Ian, great minds think alike, and I'm right there with you with Clemson. The way I view it, I think, not to say that Filipowski and Hall are equals, because they're not, but I sort of view those guys as kind of canceling each other out a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then from there, you go, okay, Clemson's got options, and Duke does too, but I don't know, something about this Clemson team, as you mentioned, you use the phrase it factor, and I agree. I think they sort of, again, nothing jumps off the page at you per se, but it just feels like they've got the right mesh. When these two teams met this year, it was only once. It was in late January. It was a 1-point Duke win at Cameron. If Duke can only win by 1 in Cameron, I worry about their ability to win at all on a neutral site. And at that point, and this is something that always gets brought up this time of the year as well, like, you got to figure, okay, if you're Clemson, you're kind of playing with house money there, right? Like, the pressure is on Duke. At that point, you'd figure, you already know Carolina's in their spot. Everybody's talking, oh, Duke UNC rematch for an ACC title. Clemson's going to come in. They've got that swagger. They've got that pedigree. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was watching the UNC Duke game this past weekend that kind of just made me feel like Duke is not, like, I don't know, like, we'll do our March Madness brackets, obviously, when they come out of him, but it wouldn't shock me if Duke isn't a team that makes it to the second weekend. Like, they just don't have it this year. There's not that crazy sparkle that Duke teams of the past have had. So I'm right there with you. Give me a Tar Heel Tiger ACC title game.
When Duke gets knocked down, it's tough for them to get back up. I think that's the thing. And in both of these, the Carolina Duke games, you saw them get down, and I understand in the Smith Center, it's very tough to come back. But even at home, they never could get past that, like, 5-4 point deficit, and then they started trading 3s for 2s at the end. Carolina made the free throws, and that's all she wrote. All right, are we at the championship game here?
Yeah, so we got the same title game. I have a feeling we'll have the same champ. I've got UNC over Clemson. Yeah. Again, I'm really high on this Carolina squad. I think a lot of people are. I think they're one of the best teams in the country. I like Clemson a lot. I don't like Clemson that much. I think when you get to a game of this magnitude and this high level of importance, that experience factor is so undervalued and underrated. And as much as I love Joe Girard, he hasn't played in a ton of big games over the course of his career, right? And on the flip side, you compare that to this Carolina squad that is playing in big games all the time, and I don't know, just tips the scales in UNC's favor a little too much, if you ask me.
I think the difference is not just scoring options for UNC, because Clemson has that too. They've got plenty of dudes that can score. But UNC has 3 or 4 different guys that take over games. Baycott, RJ, and Cormac Ryan. Harrison Ingram can get hot, give you 5-6 threes. So it's not just a bevy of options that you can run plays for. It's extreme diversity in scoring. And there's some stuff on Twitter over the past 24, 48 hours of Hubert Davis running these bizarre but crazy good offensive sets where it's 3, 4, 5 actions just stacked on top of another, one by one by one. And it's enough as an observer, casual observer, to make your head spin. But it's what UConn's been doing all year. That's why their offense is so good. And with Clemson, hey man, who are you going after on the defensive end? I think you know, and it's 11. It's number 11. And you get him matched up on RJ Davis, and you're running him through 3, 4 screens. Whew. It's tough night for Joe.
So there you have it. We both got UNC over Clemson in the title game. We'll give you a couple of games to keep an eye out for, and we sort of alluded to it during the course of these predictions. But for me, I think it's a very intriguing second round matchup between Clemson and Miami, if Miami does find a way to take down BC. I like that Wake Pitt quarterfinal game, if that is indeed how things shake out. And then I think a Duke Clemson ACC semi. While we just gave our reasons why we think Clemson could win that game, I still think that is a game worth watching. And I'll give you a bonus one here too. Why not? We'll throw 4 your way. I don't know. I mean, Syracuse Duke could be interesting. I'm just saying. Again, I'm not super high on Duke. I'm not super high on Syracuse either. But you beat NC State, maybe you get a Judah explosion or you get a Chris Bell 25 piece and you get these guys hot. At that point, it'll have been a Duke team that won't have taken the court in a little while. So we'll see. I'll throw that in there with a little bit of an asterisk too.
I think both Friday games could be legit because think about this. After their teams make the semifinals, the amount of cars that are going to be going up north, North Carolina to D.C. will probably be in mass. I mean, the traffic down here is already bad. It's probably going to be ridiculous for everyone leaving Thursday night. But I think those Friday games, especially once people get off work, I mean, I guarantee you people down here are leaving work early, doing the Friday half day, and jettisoning straight up to D.C. And I think it'll be packed, especially when you get the mix of all 3 North Carolina teams. I think the energy on Friday is going to be really good and really fun.
Well, again, it all gets underway Tuesday. First round matchups, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, NC State, Louisville, and Boston College, Miami. Syracuse awaits the winner of NC State, Louisville, and we will have a shorter edition, but an episode nonetheless, to preview whatever that matchup is, whether it be the Wolfpack or the Cardinals. Be sure to keep it locked on our channel all week long for that preview prior to the Orange's ACC tournament getting underway. With that in mind, though, we'll say goodbye. Thanks so much for sticking with us. With Ian Unsworth, I'm Johnny Gadamowicz. This is Red is the New Orange. Make sure you go give a follow. If you're not already, if it's this time of year and you're not giving the Field of 68 a follow on Twitter, you're doing something wrong because they have all sorts of content. Really, it feels like every hour. Every time you refresh the timeline, there's something new, some sort of interview, some sort of show. They're giving you everything you could possibly want and then some as we inch closer and closer to the tournament. Week from now, we'll have a bracket. Very exciting time. Will Syracuse be a part of it? Probably not, but hey, that's what the next week is for. We'll sit on the edge of our seats until we find out for sure. But that'll do it for this show. With Ian, I'm Johnny saying so long. Enjoy the first round games, and we'll be back midweek to break down Syracuse's second